Good morning from Wolverton Road in the Isle of Wight Undercliff. The south-east facing rotational landslip sort of area between Blackgang in the west and Bonchurch in the east. I'm in St Lawrence, which is one of the little kind of villages, towns in the Undercliff halfway along. Lovely blackbirds singing above. I was reading an interesting paper, well several papers, recently about red squirrels on the Isle of Wight, and it classified this area, the Undercliff, which is basically an urbanised rotational landslip with lots of houses. It classified this area as unsuitable for red squirrels, which I was slightly taken aback by because they're common here. So my experience of red squirrels is that when they're present in an area of lots of different sorts of habitats, from woodland to shrublands to overgrown gardens to semi-urban or suburban and urban gardens and areas and parks and cemeteries, when they're given that broad range of habitats, they tend to occur in all of them. So red squirrels is not at all prone to avoid in these kind of urban suburban areas. As you can see, there's loads of sycamores. There's sycamores. There's a ash tree there to the left, a couple of sycamores to the right. I see them through here 3 or 4 a day when I do my morning walks like this. I've got my big camera, so if I see one I'll get a video clip. I probably won't, but yeah, like I say, when they're freed of the one thing that I think has really driven the decline, which is grey squirrels, they're quite elastic. They're not really a habitat specialist. Obviously they're arboreal, so they need trees, but I don't think they need kind of closed canopy oak woodlands or pine woodlands, pine forests. They don't need extensive forests. Nice blackcap there. They're quite happy in shrubby, scrubby, well-timbered urban gardens like this, as long as there's mature trees at a reasonably continuous canopy. The canopy isn't completely continuous through here by any means. There's lots of gaps, there's lots of patches, small copses, and they're just in everyone's gardens where they have trees. They don't need woodlands. They're not well-wooded gardens, as you can see. This is fairly typical suburbia, really. I say fairly typical, the sea is right there. And it's the southern coast of the Isle of Wight, but in terms of the habitat structure and composition, it's pretty typical urban or suburban habitat. So, why am I saying this? Just because let's not assume that red squirrels is or will in future be confined to woodland, well-wooded regions. So I've had them in Ventnor, which is a town. I have them frequently in Ventnor. I used to have a garden in the middle of Ventnor with very few trees around it, and we used to get squirrels, red squirrels on our feeders every day. So it's just quite an interesting, or maybe quite an interesting illustration of where we just have completely the wrong end of the stick about the natural history of one particular species, based probably on, well, I don't know what really. Not sure if anyone's done a survey of red squirrels in the Isle of Wight Undercliff. Now, perhaps you could argue that it's a sink habitat, that they're just kind of overspilling from prime habitat inland on the island. But there isn't very much woodland in the south of the Isle of Wight. There's a few small copses, but they're very fragmented and scattered. So I can't really see how this operates as a sink. And add to that, there's always juveniles. You know, they are reproducing a lot of young. So it could still be a sink, obviously. The kind of recruitment rate could be too low to sustain the population on its own. I very much doubt that's true. Anyway, moving swiftly on, what birds are there around? There's obviously blackbirds singing like mad. There's a chiff-chaff in the little willow bed over there. Nice little patch of wet copse sort of thing of about an acre. Nice long-tailed tit just flew through there. There's a wren. So we're just coming down onto the coastline. This is a part of the kind of the farmland corridor we have in the Undercliff. Cattle grazed. A lot of it's triple SI, oddly. But it's great for migrating birds. This is one of the key areas that a bird observatory would do recording from these public rights of way of migrant birds and breeding bird populations. Classic bird observatory kind of landscape this is, right slap bang in the middle of the south coast of the Isle of Wight. Well, south coast of England I should say. The Isle of Wight is slap bang in the middle of the south coast of England, occupying a gap between Portland, which is just off to the west of here, Portland Bird Observatory, and Dungeness, which is quite a long way east, and then Sandwich Bay obviously. So it's a real strategic gap in the bird observatory network. And I would love to see the bird observatory created somewhere within the Isle of Wight Undercliff, somewhere near St Catherine's Point, or here where we are now, St Lawrence, which is kind of halfway between Ventnor and St Catherine's Point. Up on Ventnor Downs would be another key recording area, because that's really good for arrivals of migrant birds, and it really holds the birds. All this habitat through here holds the birds throughout the day, even in spring. You can come here later in the day and there's just loads of birds still, especially if it's sunny and warm. They get concentrated on the sunny edges of these shrubby copses, and the grasslands are really good for wheat ears, and it's obviously fence lines for the whinchats, and it's just a great area for arrivals of common migrants. And it's a relatively narrow shelf, so you've got the sea cliff to my right, and then inland you've got the inner cliff face, and we're within the Undercliff, so it's basically a low shelf, a south exposed south facing shelf. Just about see High Hat in the distance, which is a high chalk cliff with green sand below it. So we're in a sheltered south facing sunny shelf, which the birds are just drawn into. Obviously the sea off to the south, which we'll see in a minute, which to my eye just looks perfect for a bird observatory kind of recording area. It's hard work because there is a lot of cover, lots of well timbered gardens, basically large gardens with lots of trees, so it's not for the faint hearted. But whereas on the one hand that makes it quite interesting finding rare birds. I found a few. I found rose-breasted grosbeak and eastern subalpine warbler, red-throated pipit, red-footed falcon, a few odds and sods, Bly's reed warbler, marsh warbler, those kinds of things. So it does get rares, and they are found. But it is hard work because there's so much cover. But I love it because although all the cover makes it hard work, it also means it just holds the birds brilliantly. And it's also exciting in winter here, whereas some of the bird observatories are just windswept and bleak in winter. I'm definitely not going to name names, Portland and Dungeness and Fair Isle. Definitely wouldn't call those places bleak. There's a nice Fulmer up there. Yeah, they're on the sea cliffs here. They're very low sea cliffs, chalk and green sand, kind of rubble basically from when the Undercliff was formed. It's Europe's largest rotational landslip. So yeah, in winter, whereas summer bird observatories basically close down and are bleak and horrible, Here it's just wonderful in winter. Full of red squirrels, so you can see those. Oh, actually not in winter. But anyway, yeah, it's full of birds in winter as much as in during migration and in summer. So what would a bird observatory do? It would would need to set up a charity, bird observatory charity, and this is Woody Bay we're coming up to, Woody Head, and have a warden, an assistant warden I think, so 2 members of staff, and then it would form a network of volunteers to help do bird recording every day. So intensive ringing, constant effort ringing year round. Have a look into Woody Bay. Not going to go down there, but lovely rocky shoreline. So yeah, bird ringing would be a mainstay, as it always is in bird observatories. Plus walking around on foot. Not sure how else you're going to walk around. Walking around, recording grounded land birds and visible migration. So visible migration through the Undercliff is can be mind-blowing. I think the birds are compressed in a kind of a narrow front between the inner cliff face over there inland and the coastal cliffs, and they're all coasting, so they either go east or west, apart from things coming in off. You know, the meadow pippers and that tend to come in off, whereas everyone else, all the finches and hirundines, are following the coastline basically. They're probably just going round and round the Isle of Wight numerous times before they realise they're on an island and they're going round in circles. That's my theory. But it does mean, because they're compressing a quite a narrow front, these visible visible migrants flying overhead, quite a narrow front, therefore they're quite easy to count and get quite nice standardised kind of counts. Because they're on a narrow front, they're all compressed. You can see most of them and hear most of them from vantage points scattered through the Undercliff. It's just wonderful. That's nice. Whenever the sun comes out, even in winter here, it just warms up really quickly because of its southerly aspect, and it's sheltered in a cliff face which shelters it from the northerly winds to some extent anyway. Today's a northerly I think, and it's fairly breezy, or is it a southerly? Anyway, when there is a northerly or an easterly as well, you do feel the cold down here, but don't really get frosts. Certainly don't really get snow. You don't get it settling down here for more than probably once or twice every decade I've seen snow down here. So it's a lovely microclimate. There's the cows. Tell me what you think in the comment section. Should we move forward with setting up a charity to create a bird observatory on the Isle of Wight? Something I've been thinking about for years and years and have never really done much about it, but could be the time now. So we'd need to, as well as raising the funds to have a warden and assistant warden, which I think would be membership fees, we'd need to find a way of setting up a base. So I think that would start out just as a converted caravan, or probably not a caravan, some static building, maybe a caravan actually. Just a reception kind of base where the warden can base himself, herself, and visitors can drop in and say what's about, anything about, whatever it is that birders say. Wood pigeon over there. And then I don't think we would need accommodation. I'm not even sure accommodation is a money spinner for a bird observatory. It may be. I have to ask Portland and Dungeness. But if it isn't, if it just breaks even, then we'd probably avoid that cost and hassle of accommodation and just promote numerous kind of self-catering accommodations that there are throughout the Undercliff. It's not a busy area at all. You can see I've not encountered a single person yet. This is typical. So I occasionally encounter a dog walker, but and in summer you do get long distance walkers coming through in vanishingly small numbers. So if I encounter 2 groups of long distance walkers in a 2 or 3 hour walk through here, that's a bad day in terms of disturbance. It's normally 1, maybe 2. So it's a lovely peaceful area to come birding and little disturbed. But we're on rights of way, so believe it or not, this is the England Coastal Path. It's a big strategic national path. King Charles Coastal Path, is it? But there's nobody here. I mean, it's early, it's kind of coming up for 8 in the morning. Let's just check what I got my filter on. I might have it on. Yeah, I've got it on too high. That's better. So for most of my video, I've had the filter on very high, so everything's been a bit dark. Still a bit dark, to be honest. There's one of the very few native oak trees over there in the Undercliff. It's definitely not an oak tree ecology here. Lots of holm oaks. It's really ash. Ash is the native common tree throughout the Undercliff. There are a few oaks, and there's a couple there that somebody's planted in their garden. It's chalk basically, it's a very, very alkaline. I think oak prefers the kind of the clays and sandy soils, probably clays primarily. So yeah, like I say, do tell me what you think of a bird observatory idea in the comments section below this video. And we may well get to work soon, seeing if we can find some well-off donors to help fund kind of a business plan and setting up of a bird observatory and a charity to make it all work. So we're just walking up Woody Bay cottages kind of track, which leads down to Woody Head and Woody Bay. Walking up to Wolverton Road. Get there in a second. Just doing a nice loop. Still haven't heard a cuckoo this spring, which is sad really. Somebody needs to write the definitive book about the natural history of cuckoos and what we can do to help them. As in the cuckoo we get here. I'm sure there's a family monograph for cuckoos, but we need a detailed one for, what is it, European cuckoo? Eurasian cuckoo maybe? A book that goes into how to actually do stuff for them. I'm not a fan of these species books. There's a pheasant. Finding Sanctuary. There's no shooting or anything down here in the Undercliff. But yeah, a book that goes into what you can actually do to recover cuckoo would be good. So we're just on Wolverton Road now. Walk back to the car, then head for Ventnor for a cup of coffee. Going to encounter the first person of the day. It's worth listening out for a wood warbler or something like that. It's about that time. Morning.
Morning.
So a couple of weeks ago the woodpeckers were going absolutely crazy down here. Green and great spotted are very common. Pretty sure green woodpeckers have increased since ash dieback. Maybe not actually, I don't think the dead wood has become suitable for woodpeckers that quickly, but maybe it has. The old rooks and carrion crows are very common. So finally, I've been kind of stranded on the Isle of Wight again. I was stranded on the Isle of Wight because of the brakes went in the car. It took a while to get those fixed. And now, about a month later, I've been stranded again because the power steering pump broke on the car. And that had to be fixed, and that took ages for the part to arrive at the garage and then for him to fit me in. But he fitted me in and fitted the power steering unit. It's kind of a little control unit. So now I have a car again, but I've been stranded on the island and I need to get back to Dorset to carry on with the work I'm doing. I mean, I've been doing the work here, but I need to get back to Dorset to carry on with farm visits and talking to farmers about doing nice things for wildlife on their land. Looking forward to that. Do love the Isle of Wight, do love Ventnor, but I also love getting off the Isle of Wight to do some good work with farmers. And there are definitely some farmers doing some good things. Most farmers are doing terrible things, but there's some farmers that are doing really good things. And back to the blackbird singing. There's Woody Head. No, there's Sugarloaf. Woody Head would be to the left, but you can't see it from here. Oh, where's the gimbal going there? No. It's got a mind of its own, the gimbal on this camera, sometimes. It's a DJI Osmo Pocket 3 camera, which I love, but occasionally the gimbal does its own thing. There's a blackbird there, female with a nest in there, no doubt. The way it's behaving. So I'll leave you with some blackbird bird song, I think. And blackcap.